lengthen that a bit.
Well, I suppose I'm interested in your stories about the old days with steam.
Yeah,
What do you remember about these sort of machines?
well, go on, Tom.
Well, back in the years, as I remember, from 1928, I can remember these traction engines working around the Kyneton, Trenton, Ballarat, Bendigo, anywhere in that area, these traction engines were working. But in my particular area, there was one elderly gentleman who used to drive one of these when I was young. His name was Jack Thrum, and he used to come around the district thrashing, cutting chaff, and doing odd jobs like clearing scrub if you wished the trees to be pulled out with his traction engine. In those days, there was no other thing powerful enough or big enough to travel on the road and take equipment such as they had to every farmer in the district and do the work that was required.
They used to do the stone crushing too those days too, Tom. But
Yes, they
using mobile stone crushing to sell that stone from the farms and crush for road making. That was another aspect that went out when I was a lad in the 30s. That used to happen. They used to park the engine on the side of the road, and all those great schoolboy pranks to wait till the engine was parked and it got a bit later and the driver had gone. There's always a head of steam up, and the shot was to go up and give her a bit of a rock and what have you. Well, this particular day we're up at, she was parked up at Blue Mount there, and next thing the boys got into it, the whistle went, and great fun. Oh yeah, the whistle's right, so let's have a bit of a go, and jammed her in first and forward and jammed her back, and it was rocking around, and there's a little more steam in the blythe than we reckoned on, and anyhow, I don't know what happened. One of the chaps was mucking around with the whistle and she jammed. Well, there was hell to pay then. We all scrambled and went, and this whistle was roaring and roaring and roaring, and everyone took to the scrub. That was one of the sidelines that used to happen when they left these engines about, because they always had a bit of steam up.
They finally find out about it?
Oh, somebody came and knocked the whistle off, and there's a great hue and cry went around the place, but that was just part of the pranks that used to exist in those days.
What about the problem of getting fuel for these machines?
Well, the fuel was one of their problems on the road. They had to tee up with someone to provide wood. They were fired with wood. There was no coal. They were all fired with wood, and the wood had to be cut in a length of 2 feet or 24 inches. It all had to be the right size, so it could be thrown into the boiler, and it had to be good wood, such as boxwood, wood or red gum, something that would burn with a fairly fierce heat and also last a fair while. Water was another problem, especially in the summertime. When they were travelling on the road in the winter time, there was always plenty of water holes along the road where they could draw their own water from. But in the summertime, they always had to go along and get their water from a spring or some of the farmers' dams or something like that. So therefore, a lot of times they had a horse drawn vehicle which had a Firthy on it. And he used to go ahead of the traction engine the way up, and he used to fill up with water by bucket or whichever ways and means he could get water. And then he'd come back to the traction engine. Sometimes he'd come back, the traction engine would be stopped on the side of the road because he had already run out of water and he didn't want to go take what he was used anymore, and he sort of just sat there waiting till he got more water so he could move on. Top speed of these things is about 4 miles per hour, and that's with the wind behind you. But going along up hills, sometimes they were battling to get up hills with a thing. I have seen the days when they had to drop off some of their machinery they had behind and take it up a certain hill, then come and bring the tractor all the way back and pick up the rest of it. So therefore they weren't as powerful in hilly country as some people expect them to be.
Because they had the disadvantage to in hilly country that you had to keep your water tubes, your fire tubes watered, because as part of the art in driving these devices, that when they were using them in Lozzie, going down steep gullies, the water used to run to the front of the boiler, cause the engine to prime, the water had mixed with the steam, and that reduced their efficiency, and then conversely, going up the gullies, you had to rock your engine, stop it, and push it forward to swish the fire tubes with water to keep them from getting red hot and causing problems. Dan Matheson, he was a great engine man around the Trentham area. Dan, in his later years, drove the Kyneton Shire roll-up. But Dan, when I was a boy, Dan used to relate all these great stories to me, because he was an uncle of mine, and he used to lift me up, and I'd watch the link motion and all the gearing going there. And he used to shift houses. He was up in the river country. He was all over central Victoria, and he was a well-known identity for his ability with traction engines. These fellows had a second sense. They seemed to know just how to use their machines. They got to realise their shortcomings and how to overcome them. And they were just a breed of people. Another character at Trentham was Bob Davey. Bob, in the early 20s, was the youngest certificated engine driver in Australia, and Bob's man near 70 now. And when I was a boy at school, he used to drive at the mines. I used to wag it from school, go down to the mines to see Bob, and he taught me a lot about engines when I should have been learning things that were more important. And he also taught me a lot about life too. He was quite a character, Bob, and he still is a character. And I've taken these. I haven't taken the truck down to him, but he's driven this traction engine, and took him back 50 years. You ought to have seen his eyes and his reaction. That's really fantastic. Now, there's still a few of the characters about, but they're getting old, and it's a dying art and a dying breed, and that's why I like to produce these units, because in this day and age, when everything is synthetic and plastic and things sort of happen without any reason, lets people know, the younger generations know, that our nation, our whole way of life was founded on the power of steam, and these devices that, however crude on today's standards, they altered our way of life and provide the standard of living. This is part of the attraction to doing these things.
Speaking of rollers too, actually the roller was only a converted tractor. They made up a big roller to go in the front and two roller wheels to go on either side. But they had to be cast in a foundry. Nowadays they could make them up in sections and weld them together and do it quite simple. But in those days they had to be poured in a mould. So they were very accurate and pouring them in the mould, because they had to be a minimum of turning in a lathe. And I remember over at Tuella's they had a lathe which was nearly as long as the factory itself, for turning up wheels for road rollers. And the chap that used to work it, he used to sit all day reading a book. It took that long to go across the face of the cut. So he could read a book all day just about by the time the lathe got across the face of the cut, and perhaps come home next morning and start again, go back across the other face to true them up.
While you're talking about Tuella's, Tom, just before George Tuella died, he was nearly 90 when he died, I took this little loco engine up to show George, because George in 1903 was an apprentice with Tuella Brothers, and he was one of the brains behind the establishment up till they were sold in 1969. 69 I think it was, that Tuella Brothers sold out.
I don't know, I wasn't.
And just let me think, 69? Yeah, I think it was 69. Anyhow, that's by the way. And my son and I went up to see George and get him to relate a few stories. And he told me about the time that when he was an apprentice, one of these traction engines had broken an axle and was stuck out in the bush in Pilato, and that the owner had come in and he wanted to have the thing repaired. So in the machine shop they turned up a bush which would be 6 or 8 inches diameter and bored out to fit the size of the axle. The rear axles would be at least 6 inches in diameter, and it was George's job as an apprentice to go out and fit this sleeve onto the axle. And he said all I had was a set of calipers and a rule and a few files. So he says, I went out in the bush. George had a peculiar way of speaking. He was a grand old gentleman. He said, I went out in the bush, he says, armed with this, and I filed for days, and I got it all right. He said, then I had to light the fire and heat it to a red to shrink it on. And he said, well, heated it up I got it and I pressed it on, he said. We had it. Oh, he says it was a great thing to have it on. But after I got it on, he said, it suddenly occurred to me, what would have happened if I hadn't heated it up and it got halfway on and stuck? He said, I'd have never got it off. So we had a discussion on this, and George related the fact that when the engine came in again in 1930, the piece of steel bushing that he'd sweated on to join the axle up was still intact and hadn't moved. That was in 1903 to 1930. So I was very fortunate in seeing George when I did, and took my son around. He told us a lot of interesting stories, but within 12 months he died, just short of his 90th birthday, I think. Now that ended an era, and a very interesting era it was in traction engine engineering.
What's your earliest memory of steam, Rod?
Well, my earliest memory is when my uncle, Dan Matheson, lifted me up when I was a boy of perhaps 5, and held me up to watch the link motion gear in the in his traction engine. He was driving a road roller at that time, rolling roads around the Trentham area, and I was in town and with my mother, and looking and giving Uncle a sort of a grin and a wave, and I remember him saying, would you like to have a ride on it? Well, there was no two thoughts about that, and he dragged onto me and got hold of me and held me up, and I was able to peer into the crankshaft and the eccentrics and watch the motions go. That is actually the earliest inspirational memory, I suppose. I was inspired from that point, and I started to make small engines then. Whilst I was at school, I think I made the first one on my own when I was about 10. It was the start, and
Well, I remember
on ever since, more or less.
taking a bow wagon with 4 horses with one of those stationary tractors on to Trentham to be repaired. It took me 2 days. Had 4 big Clydesdales and a bow wagon. They loaded it on a bow wagon. They loaded it with a big hand lifting crane.
Right.
They put it in low gear and they wound it up, and then we backed the wagon under and they lowered it down on. They put big sleepers underneath it to hold the weight of it, and we trundled it across to Trentham because it had broken something in the main flywheel drive shaft or something like that, and had to be all redone again. So that's how it got there. But those days they were stationary. They were only on 4 wheels, and you dragged them with a horse.
So that was the portable engine.
That was the portable. Well, that was steam driven, much like that.
It wasn't self-propelling though.
No self-patrolling. You just had a turntable on it, and you put 2 big draft horses in it, and you dragged it around.
And these engines were used in the sawmilling game a lot. That's right. Drag them into the bush, and they set up their sawmill and cut their scagling, and then when they cut out that area, they'd move to another area and set up the mill again, and
Yeah, well, that's
do
their
their
idea.
there.
But they used to load them perhaps on something to transport them. They never dragged them all the way to where we were going to take them. They transport them in a wagon, or they transport them behind one of these even. But these, as you said, they used to drag their crushers behind them. They'd go to where the council wanted them.
That's right.
Yeah, they'd have blokes there drilling holes by hand and blasting, and then they'd bring up these started by on a sledge, a lot of it, dragged by a horse.
Yeah.
They'd roll it onto the sledge and drag it up to near the crusher, and then they'd manhandle it onto the thing into the crusher, and all that screenings was carted by dray onto the roads that was being built.
Yeah.
It was more like convict days than what it was like it is today. Yeah. And I remember an old chap sitting on the side of the road. They used to call it napping. That's right, with breaking stones. He used to have a hammer with a gimpy hammer, and he'd keep breaking stones all day long. It was like being a convict, but you were getting paid for it, so much a yard, and that's all he done. And when he used to strike certain ones he used to call donuts, they wouldn't break. He'd throw them aside. Now, when they had a swampy bit of land, they used to take that and drop them all on the roads where it was swampy, and they used to sink in and help them make a foundation.
Did you work with the steam engines, Tom? Did you work with the steam engines?
I worked in those days when I was young with steam engines, but now I don't work with steam engines.
What did you do in those days?
Well, we used to thrash, and we used to drive these things on the roads and thrash for the farmers. Cut their hay up into chaff and all that sort of thing.
How did you get into it? Were your family involved with it, or?
No, only me involved with it. But my family grew the stuff, and I became involved because I was more or less I was more mechanically minded. I didn't want to be farmer. I was mechanically minded, so I didn't want to be a farmer. And that's why I went to the Melbourne and went to take on the engineering side of it. No, later in life I got left part of the farm, and I used to use it for a weekend place. And to sort of just for the weekend, I used to go up there and get away with it all. But apart from that, well, I had no interest in farming. During the Depression years, when things were tough, we didn't have very much to eat or anything else, so we used to grow a lot of our own stuff and have our own.
Same
Same principle.
but very dangerous. I forget what they call
They
it.
called them a swing
Saw, that's right.
Yeah, well, I gave one to a chap. Still had one when I sold the farm, and I gave it to a chap in Melbourne.
If you're damn glad to get rid of it in case it took off and chased you.
No, I could use it very well. In fact, I cut more wood in a day with that swing saw than what they could with chainsaws.
Yeah.
I could cut more.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The
The chainsaws of today with the power and the engine.
Yeah, well, this is made by Mobil Co. At the present day, Mobil Co. makes a machine the same principle for cutting lawns.
Yeah.
And you follow it. It's power driven. The wheels the same as that drag saw was.
Right.
And it's got guide which you lower down, and it drives the whirling blades.
Yeah.
And the farmers use it for cutting in there through orchards and all that sort of thing, because it cuts a beautiful swath right through.
Oh, yes.
See, and being power driven, they just walk behind it, and it's got a big 7-horse engine driving it, so that's still in use in the present day.
Yeah.
And this gentleman says he comes from Ferntree Gully. If he ever likes to go to a place, a chap called Pat Cashmore at Menzies Creek, on his 20 acres there, you'll see one of them working. So he will, because he uses it quite consistently, because he grows daffodils, dried daffodils. And each year he cuts around with daffodils before he picks them, so that one is still in operation. And if he likes to go to 12 Rex Court, Noble Park, you'll see the swing saw there.
Yeah.
It's still there. Yeah. Covered over, and it's still
Waiting for you to come back and get it, Tom.
That's right.
Yeah.
They'll never be used, I don't think, until I go back and use it. So there you are. That's the thing. But that's the era we're going through now. We've got chainsaws.
Yeah, well, with a traction engine and a chainsaw today, you'd have no trouble.
We'd have no trouble to cut wood for these, and with all the water they got along the roads now with CFA firefighting stuff.
Yeah.
You could drive one of these right through to Queensland or anywhere.
Well, there was a chap who drove a truck, steam truck.
Yeah, I saw that.
To go right up north.
Yeah, something similar to the one you got here.
That was a Foden.
Foden, yeah, it was a Foden, but it was the same similar like that.
Yeah.
See, it takes them that long to get up steam in the morning and get going again and clean the flaming tubes out every night or morning, whichever you like. They suit up. Now, explain to us, Roy, those tubes, how do you put them in? Do you peen them in?
Oh no, these boilers are all copper boilers with silver brazing.
Oh, they were braided.
In
The old days,
boilers, you used to use a tube expander like the old days, but these are all copper boilers because we have a boiler code that these are built to.
Yeah.
And the copper boiler is the most efficient up to about 6-inch diameter barrel. Over a 6-inch diameter barrel, you can go to steel. The boiler thickness of tube has to be extremely thick due to wastage under the boiler code. So over 6 inches, a steel boiler is desirable, but under 6 inches, we stick to the copper. And this is all silver brazed and closely fitted within a couple of thou to allow the capillary action of the silver to float and unite the two metals. So it's a block situation. There's no need for tube renewals because they'll last a lifetime.
I see.
But in the old days, you used a conical tube expander,
right, yeah.
which you expanded the tubes into the bagging plate and the smoke fox tube both, and that was another story.
That's another.
Right, tell me about your earlier days at school, and did you ever get to work with steam engines?
Well, actually, I've always worked on the side with steam engines, but I never got to work with steam engines in full time. I ended up in electronics and various other types of occupation there, because due to a set of circumstances, when I was apprenticed to the Fleet Forge Company, I got a physical knockout, which precluded me from this heavier type of work. So I took on electronics then to be able to earn a crust.
That was your polio?
Yes, yes. And so ever after that, I was always interested in, and every chance I got, I kept in touch with it.
So what were your aspirations up to that stage? You were actually intending to work with
Yes, yes.
heavy
I was
machinery?
apprentice marine engineer at that stage, and of course this knocked things out. But during the late 40s, I built myself, before I got into this, I built myself a Formula 3 racing car, same as Sterling Moss used to use just after the war. It was a car about 500 weight, had 19-inch motorbike wheels, had a 500cc Norton dirt track engine in the back, 4-speed box, and used to go like the clappers. That whetted my appetite for building things, but then of course over the years you've got to earn a crust somewhere, and it's right until circumstance, health forced me out of the last news agency I was in, and other things. But well, I'll start on my lifelong dream now, and that's where it started.
So you actually had this ambition for a while to actually build these models?
Oh, sure, since I was 14. Yes.
Right.
In fact, I built, for my 15th birthday, I built a small model airplane engine. An old friend that used to take an interest in building things, and I got in with him. He happened to be one of my father's World War I mates, unbeknown to me and him. We just met by chance, and they hadn't seen him for 20 odd years. I ended up at his place. He had a workshop in the backyard, and we renewed a friendship from a father that left off soon after the 1918 war, and I kept in contact with him, and he gave me a lot of encouragement, and then it just sort of went on and on and on. You know.
So your engineering skills that you've used to build your models, was that something that goes back a way too, or is that fairly recent?
Well, my forebears were always in engineering, blacksmithing. My great-great-grandfather came out with Pascoe Faulkner in 1835, and he was one of Pascoe Faulkner's brickies. The old grandfather, who lived to be 100, by the way, he was the oldest living Victorian native in 1940. He was 100 years old at that stage. He was a blacksmith, and right throughout the family, my grandfather, he was in blacksmithing trade, and the father was in engineering in the automobile side, and I'm just lucky to have inherited the ability, and this is more or less the culmination of my life's ambition, more or less, to use my hands, because I was thwarted somewhat when I was 15 polio.
Yeah, well, I started off as a blacksmith. Motor cars were coming in, well, old T-model Fords and all that. We had a blacksmith shop one end of the big place, the workshop, and we had a repair shop for motor cars on the other end of it. And we were shearing horses and putting tyres on wagons and all that sort of thing in one end, and I could see no future because horses were gradually getting scarcer and scarcer. So they said, well, why don't you change over and go on the mechanical side of it, go up from the other end of the workshop. So that's how I came over, but I started off as a blacksmith.
Yeah.
I can still weld 2 bits of iron together, forge.
That's good. I got my forge up here, and Tom can come and make a few.
Well, I know how to put a tyre on
That sounds like
shrink a tyre onto a wagon wheel. If you had any wagon wheels, did you want tyres shrunk on? I know how to...
No, he's got pneumatic tyres on his wagon.
They're no good there.
But he wants to make a few horseshoes, though, Tom.
I know a few horseshoes.
Yeah, well, to keep his horses in good form.
But you don't make horseshoes nowadays, you fit them.
Oh, Phil does.
Does he?
Yeah.
Ah. But
You can't buy them.
you buy them and fit them now.
You can't buy dry stock shoes.
You can't buy them.
Right down with it. Pretty
Phil's got 2 Clydesdales that he's come up from Victoria with. Yeah, he finds he can't buy the shoes, and he's got to make his own. So
Well, you got to get 1/2-inch iron and all that sort of thing, and bend them over you need a good forge to bend them over. Do you put heels on them?
yes.
And, you don't bend the heels onto them.
Didn't you have heels on the ones that you were making there?
You lay a piece of steel into them.
No, I've been
You've been hard facing
in hard facing.
with the arc welder.
Big bloke Clydesdales. He used to supply for the breweries. He used to supply overseas. Because I went to India twice with Clydesdales, take them over there for the pulling guns for the Indian Army. They were medium draft at Clydesdale, so we went over. We took them over by ship, and I went over twice as a trip, and Calcutta the first time, and Bombay the next time, and the dirtiest place I've ever been in. In those days, there were coal-fired ships, and the coolies used to fire by they carry the coal in their head. And they had to put a shovel full of coal and they'd walk up the gangplank one side, tip it into the hold and down the thing. They used to chant all night and they used to drive us up the wall. You couldn't get to sleep. They had this sing-song thing all the time they were coaling the ship.
Do you remember what it was like?
What, the sing-song?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I do.
It was a
I'll give you a version of it. Yeah. All the time, you know, and talking in their own language, of course, and he used to have a big foreman there, big Chinaman, you know, he didn't have a whip, but he was near enough to have the whip, and driving them on all the time, and he used to take them about, the coal of the ship, he used to take about 3 days. Well, the coal wouldn't be out of all the bunkers, but it meant taking about 3 days coaling the ship by just carrying it in their head, up one side, down the other. So the captain used to give us shore leave, but he used to tell us not to go to certain areas, keep out of them. You know, we were only allowed to go into certain areas because there was a curfew on. Well, you get your throat cut if you went down to certain Chinese or into the Indian quarters, you know. But that was a place where I saw, when I was only a young fellow, I suppose, 16 and a half. And it shocked me to see an Indian woman feeding a baby on one breast and a pig on the other. And that upset me. The pig
You
was
never
more,
got over it, Tom.
no, the pig was more important than the baby, actually. That pig. And so she was feeding the pig and the baby at the same time. So that was another one thing. I come home and told Mum, and she said, "Oh, how awful!" So,
She says, you saw that? And at that tender age, Tom, no doubt it moulded your outlook for it.
that's it. Yeah, it gave me a different idea. Look out in life.
I'd reckon.
Yeah. Another thing it gave me a look out. I didn't think seasick horses. They could vomit like
You'd have to stand aside, wouldn't you?
Yeah, they can vomit further than a human person can. And then when they didn't know what was wrong with them because of the seasick, they used to get down and we used to rig up overhead gantry.
To lift them
And
up.
we put canvas underneath them, we'd lift them up and get them up and sort of hold them up that way.
Yeah.
And then we start feeding them molasses and stuff into them.
Yeah.
Keep their strength on it to get them in the thing.
How'd they survive? They all get there?
Yes, they all got there. Oh, yes. None of them died. No, we had a vet on board
What was your job on the ship?
just to look after horses. That's all. We were stable boys, horses, other thing. Just to look to feed them, see to water them, and see nothing else. No, we were just looking after. We had a vet, and everything else. We were only looking after those horses. Those horses were worth a lot of money. A dead horse is no good. It's worth money when they got to India. So, and
Pretty responsible job, no doubt.
yeah,
Under the trying conditions.
under the Indian government scheme, the horse had to be landed alive and checked over by them, and had to be all right, unless they wouldn't. You might as well shoot it on the spot and give it away for meat. It had to be acceptable. They wouldn't. They didn't pay you cash here in Australia, and you ship them over. The contract status was on you. It was on you to get them there and to get them ashore, and they had to be proven correct.
Yeah.
Now that was the thing that. Now talking about going back to Pisers, in my days, Pisers used to supply these horses to the Carlton United breweries. Now even the present day, you can see those Clydesdales pulling the brewery trucks. Well, every now and again you'd see 40 or 50 horses in a paddock, and they were up for a spell. They were all up on their toes from pulling on. Those days they had blocks on the roads.
Oh yes, the wooden blocks.
Wooden blocks.
Elizabeth Street.
Elizabeth Street and all that. They're pulling on them. They were slippery. They were red gum blocks.
So they used to cant up.
They cant up on their toes, and every one of them, not their front feet, all their back legs, where they were falling all the time, used to come up because the tendons in the legs used to shorten.
Right.
Now those horses would come up for 6 months, and you'd see them after 6 months, and they'd go back flat again.
Yeah.
See, and they'd go back.
Mm.
But if they kept that way, the horses would cripple.
Yes.
So they had to bring them out and spell them. So that was one thing with horses that pulling heavy loads had to on dirt roads all right, but not in bitumen or
Yeah,
block roads.
It's too much reflected hardness. It's
Too much
made
reflected hardness. Now that's when all their shoes used to get worn down on the toes.
Oh, yeah.
see? Yeah. And that's how the farm horses, you never saw them go up their toes. Farm horses were shod because they used to drive them, bring them along roads to ship from one farm to the other, or pulling ploughs along roads. They were shod. Yeah.
Well, you ready there?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, well, in building of these models, you start off basically with a set of castings, a plan to work to, and it involves machine work, quite a lot of hand work, fitting work, and you do piece by piece. For example, the wheels of the traction engine, they take you about a week to make because they're made in like a cycle wheel. You start with a hub, which you've got to machine up, mark out, drill and tap. Then you make the spokes, you fit all them, and you fit the rims. You make jigs to fit these together. So, for example, the wheel is a fairly complex piece of the machine. If you put the wheels on the trucks or the locomotives, you make them out of a casting. Your boiler is another complex piece of work. You have to flange all your plates. You make formers, flange your plates, drill, cut the tubes, silver braze them together, inspect all the time for lack of faults. It's got to be right. Then you hydraulically test to twice the working pressure. The model code specifies 100 pounds per square inch working pressure, so you test to 200. That's the boiler. The valve mechanisms, the cylinders, the connecting rods and crankshafts, a lot of it's handwork, using lathe for machining your circular sections, milling machines or filing for your irregular sections, and generally it entails the whole gamut of engineering, from marking out sheet metal work right through machining, and in some cases making our own patterns and moulding our own castings.
What about actually working with the small scale? Does that involve particular problems or not?
Well, as you get older, it involves the problem of seeing, because you're working in very fine tolerances. You're working in drills that might be 15 thousandths of an inch in diameter. You get to a drill that's a 16th of an inch, and it's fairly large, but you do adjust to it. You get a different mental outlook on making the small stuff, but unfortunately your eyes tend to give you problems as you get older, and you've got to use magnification often to get good finishes and close tolerances.
Can you actually buy small pieces like nuts and bolts?
You can buy small nuts and bolts. Often it's more economical to buy them by the 20s than to make them, but in many cases you can't buy them and you have to go to work and make up these very small parts. But in Sydney there is a supply of Australian-made model engineering or miniature engineering pieces.
And how close can you actually work to the original model or the original?
Well, these are off the original work plans. For example, the Clayton truck has been taken from the existing work plans that were drawn in the 20s, and it has been scaled down 2 inches to the foot, or 1/6 of the size.
So are they exact replicas?
Exact.
And by how do you feel about the three models by comparison, the train, the traction engine and the truck?
Well, the traction engine, that was perhaps fairly time consuming, that being the first model. In hindsight, it was probably easier in the truck, because a lot of the very close work is closed in an enclosed section of the engine of the truck. There's quite a lot of work went into that because of its valve gear system and its design. It's very hard to say until you get into it. You can look at a drawing and say, oh yes, that will take me so long, but there are many unforeseen things that crop up, difficulties in achieving tolerances and what have you, and the job goes on for some time considerably longer than anticipated. This next year I'm hoping to build a 3-inch barrel traction engine, which will be 3 times larger than the little one that's 1 inch to the foot that's sitting there. That will take I would say perhaps 18 months, but it should be considerably easier work because everything is larger to work to.
So the smaller the scale, or the
The,
smaller the model,
the more precise and the more painstaking you have to be to get the good results.
any idea approximately how much time each model's taken you?
Well, in hours it's difficult to say really, but the little traction engine, that took me about 9 months to build. The locomotive took me 18 months, and this rig, the steam truck and trailer, combined would have taken me a little over 2 years. I've had quite a bit of broken time on the truck. I worked continuously on the little loco. That was a 7-day-a-week job because I belonged to a club that needed an extra loco, and I worked very hard to achieve the result. The little traction engine, well, that was worked fairly constantly, but I had to feel as I went because that was the first model of reasonable detail that I attempted.